Hello everyone and welcome to this overview of IPSAS 45 Property Planning Equipment. I'm here today with Dave Warren. Thank you for joining me. My name is Agustina Yambi and I'm a Senior Manager at the IPSAS, and today we'll give you a quick overview of IPSAS 45.
Thanks, Augustina. So I've been around long enough to remember when this project was actually multiple projects. There was an infrastructure component, there was a measurement component, there was a heritage component, and for those listeners that have followed along all the way, or those that are just starting to follow in the journey now, can you kind of give them some key highlights that they should know as this project wraps up now?
Definitely. So I think as we're wrapping the project, one big thing will be that IPSAS 17 is getting replaced by IPSAS 45, but that doesn't mean that you're with all new guidance in itself. For example, there's no longer a scope exclusion for heritage. There's additional guidance added specifically for heritage and infrastructure to improve the application of the standard. We also have the introduction of COV, which you're extremely familiar with the measurement project. COV is the current operational value, and that's a new measurement basis for one of the models, and new disclosures from the perspective of unrecognized heritage assets and also current value measurements.
So I am very familiar with current operational value, but before I ask you a question on that, there are three things you touched on, and the first that I wanted to ask about was you talked about how IPSAS 45 is replacing IPSAS 17. So what does that mean for constituents?
So for constituents, what it means is specifically with that replacement, you will have additional guidance, but specifically I think it will be for, we have two models right now in IPSAS 17 and also in IPSAS 45. We have cost model and then you have the revaluation model. But now on IPSAS 45, rather than having a revaluation model, we have a new label to it, which is a current value model, and then the addition of a current value measurement basis being COV. So I think from that perspective, constituents will look at if they're applying or they select current value model, they will have a new measurement to consider, and also specifically if the entity has heritage assets, which currently they haven't recognized. Now IPSAS 45 no longer has that scope exclusion, and they will have to recognize those in the financial statement.
Okay, great. So you talked a lot of measurement there, but before we dive in a little deeper on current operational value, can you talk to me a little bit about the heritage aspects and the infrastructure aspects, and just, again, what does that mean for constituents? What was added and what were the inherent challenges related to those components of the project?
So thanks for bringing me back to that. Specifically, the issues that constituents had highlighted was that it was difficult to distinguish or determine what was a heritage asset or what was an infrastructure asset. So first I would like to say that the IPSAS concluded that heritage and infrastructure assets are a subset of PP&E. However, for constituents it was important to determine which was one or the other. So the IPSAS created characteristics, specific characteristics both for heritage and infrastructure assets, characteristics that distinguish them from other PP&E, characteristics that also reflect the complexity on the recognition and the measurement of heritage assets and infrastructure assets. So you will have those characteristics that will help you distinguish between them. But the application, again, is the same. So when you think of how am I going to measure them, how are we going to recognize them, the guidance is exactly the same, both from other PP&E, such as a building that is not heritage or a building that is heritage.
Great. So it sounds like the implementation of the standard should be simplified to some extent, and at least the same principles apply across PP&E, heritage, and infrastructure.
Yes.
So without holding you back any longer, I know you want to talk about measurement this entire talk. So current operational value, what does that mean?
So current operational value, what it means is that constituents told the IPSAS during the ED phase and before the ED phase that they didn't see fair value to be a measurement that they could apply for heritage assets specifically. Particularly also considering that a lot of what public sector entities do is operational capacity. They're not going to generate income or cash flows, and they didn't see fair value at the highest and best use to be a relevant characteristic that they could use. So the IPSAS developed current operational value, which is a measurement specifically developed for assets that are held for operational capacity. And therefore, this IPSAS 45 now is introducing for the first time this measurement, which you can get more information on the measurement, IPSAS 46. But the idea is that if the entity decides to select the accounting model, which is current value model as opposed to your historical cost model, the entity will have to do the analysis to determine whether that asset is held for its operational capacity or for its financial capacity. If it's operational capacity, you will apply COV, and if it's financial capacity, they will be applying fair value.
So Augustine, I really like that. It sounds like depending on what the entity is really using the asset for, they're able to present that information in a fair way or a decision useful way to financial statement users.
Yes.
That's great. So last question from me. So I know the standard becomes effective on January 1st, 2025. Anything else that you want stakeholders to know before that effective date?
No, I think that pretty much wraps this up for us. We have covered the replacement. We have discussed this new current value measurement that is being introduced. I think the key thing is always go to our website. There's additional information about at a glance that tells you exactly what has changed from IPSAS 17. Now in IPSAS 45, we have discussed the effective date. So I think that's pretty much it. Thank you so much for joining me, Dave.
Thanks, Augustina.
Thank you.